Good evening. Welcome to Eretz Israel. I'm Avraham Shira. We're continuing an exploration of apikorsut, it's called in Hebrew, or I call it atheism. There's distinctions between definitions, especially when we're using different words for different languages. But tonight we're going to look at what I call the wisdom of the atheists. And Rebbe Nachman calls it the chokhmah, which is wisdom, of course, and the faith of the atheist. That the atheist also has faith. And we learned last time that every wisdom has a song attached to it. And so too, we're going to learn about every faith that has a song attached to it. And why I call this the wisdom of the atheists, the glory at the gates of hell, is because there is glory and beauty in human endeavor. But when it's not attached to the right things, the end of the road, the end of the show, the end of the concert, the end of the exhibit, there's emptiness. Whereas when we attach our wisdom, our creative endeavor, which here we're going to connect to the idea of faith that leads to art, when we talk about everything having its own type of song, its own type of dance. Elsewhere, Rebbe Nachman says that wisdoms have their own type of dancing. And that includes art as well. So all of those things, there is beauty, but at the end, where are you? So we're going to start out here on the end. We're in the middle of the long fifth paragraph. And we've talked also about the God fills all worlds and surrounds all worlds. And these are also concepts that demand faith, because the proof of them is going to be very hard to reach. And God's wisdom is unreachable. And people don't like that. They don't like the idea of something being unreachable. It humbles us. But we understand that we have much wisdom that we can reach without trying to understand everything from God's perspective. Now, Emunah yesh la gamkein zemer v'nigud, and faiths also have their own song and harmony or melody. Hamiyuchad le'emunah, to that faith. So it's not just Jewish, it's Christian, it's Buddhist, it's Hindu, it's Muslim, whatever faith you have, it has a certain song to it, because we talked about it before, that song and art and all these, and wisdom itself is about the arrangement of the parts in a way that produces a certain pleasure. Whether it's parts of sound, which creates music, or parts of images, which creates photography or painting or sculpture, or parts of mathematical equations that you can create all kinds of things with, like nuclear bombs, or find ways to make fresh water from salt water. There's good and bad in all these things, but the wisdom is about the organization of information that creates beauty. Just like our bodies, there's a certain aesthetic to the human body. And if the aesthetic is broken, somebody's too skinny or too overweight, then our sense of the beauty is lost in the aesthete perception of proportion. So a proportion is a lot to do with all of these things. And wisdom is putting things in proper proportion, knowing what's important, what's less important, knowing when to be quiet, when to raise your voice, when to intervene, when to step back. This is all part of the wisdom. It's all part of proportion. It's all part of knowing the balance of things, which we're told that was Adam's first job, to guard and to work in the garden and guard it. Meant to keep things in proper perspective, to know how to keep the garden. And Rebbe Nachman says the main thing about that Adam has to do, and everybody has to do in their garden, is make sure that the trees don't bother each other and overgrow each other and destroy each other for no reason except that they're too close together. Okay, so even every faith has its song. Now that doesn't require much proof. If you just go, into a music store, you go online, or you look, go walk by any religious structure. There's some music coming out of it eventually, and you'll hear a music that represents or better reflects that faith. Okay, even the faith of the nations, which is not the faith of Israel. They don't necessarily have the attachment to the idea of the unity. But they also have all kinds of other ideas, and he calls them divrei ta'utam, the words of their mistakes. Their mistaken theology, the mistaken metaphysics. V'yesh lekol emuna shel akum nigun miyuchad. And every faith, though, still has its song. You know, it's getting to be the season to be jolly, right? Well, in Judaism, we need to be jolly all year long. But the season to be jolly, it's a song. It's almost like a child's song, right? Ho, 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 right? But it's connected to Christmas, and that connects to a certain faith. Now, God forbid that a person would follow such a faith if it doesn't have the metaphysics behind it to explain and to support, whereas the chassidut and the Kabbalah gives support to the faith of Israel. And that's a discussion maybe we'll have another time. But the mizamrim bo, v'orechim bo, that they sing and they organize and they play their music in the beit tefilatam, in their houses of prayer, whatever their faith might be. And I was once cold and hungry, walking through Bruges, a little town in Belgium, and it was cold and it was wet, and I wanted to get out of the weather, so I walked into a church. It felt strange. I wasn't religious either, but it felt strange. But the music is soothing. A lot of that high organ, that Bach style music, it's very soothing, and so that's oftentimes the purpose of the music itself, is to soothe us from our everyday toil and our everyday troubles. But where are we going with it? Well, he tells us that each of these faiths has their music in their house of prayer, and so too, the opposite equal element is true in holiness. In holiness, there's also songs and music that are played in houses of prayer. Now, call emunah yesh la zemer nigun. He repeats the idea. Every faith has its own song. V'oto zemer miuchad emunah, and that zemer, that song, is specifically for that faith. Shehu emunah elionah mikol aminei hachmot. And this is the faith. This faith, whatever your faith is higher. He says, שאמונה העליונה מכל מיני חוכמות ואמונות שבעולם היינו אמונה באור אין סוף. The highest faith and the highest wisdom is faith in the infinite being. Now that Or Ein Sof, the light of the infinite being, we've translated here, and many times in Kabbalah you'll see that the word for light, or, is really, in Aramaic, or is fire. Okay, which is a connection, obviously, but between the languages and between the concepts, but what we have translated or Ein Sof as the ratzon, the will, the infinite will. See, God's will is not only infinite, it can be broken into many little pieces until every little thing you see has a desire to grow, because the desire to live and to grow and to be, to exist, is from Hashem as well, because that's what the nature of His light. He is that infinite light, that infinite desire to grow, to live, to be. Now, so this light, it's part of the infinite being. And it is that which surrounds all worlds. It's greater than us, that we can't achieve it and understand and grasp it. And then it also fills all worlds, where it's much more accessible to us to have that experience of what it means to feel God's faith, to feel the closeness, to feel the warmth, to feel the fire, to feel the desire. That's an internal experience of God versus the external experience, which is more like the grandiosity, the awesomeness, the wonder that accompanies the contemplation of nature. Now, Oto azemer hu gam kein lamala mikol ha-neginat v'zmirot shebolam. And also, the song that's connected to that infinite light is greater than all the other songs, than all the other songs in the world. That are applied to each, that are coming out of or emerging from every type of wisdom and every type of faith. So he's giving us like a pyramidal or archetypal structure that the highest faith is the faith in the infinite. And that highest faith has a song or a melody attached to it, which is higher than all the other melodies. And it has a wisdom that's attached to it that's higher than all the wisdoms. And then we come down our hierarchy, and you have all the different categories that people have given to music and to wisdom and to faith. Okay? And you can rank them if you will. But he makes it easy for us. He says, just go with the top guy, go with the number one religion, Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the infinite being. Ki hu ha-zimra shayach le'emunah be'or Ein Sof, v'hu ma'ala min hakol. And it is higher than all other concepts, whether music or wisdom or beauty. V'la'atid lavo, in the future, she'yafoch le'kol ha'amin safa b'rovara, in the future when God gives all the nations a clear speech to express and compress the divine light into their speech, that people will talk and you will hear God, because they won't be blocking, their own personalities won't be blocking the truth. Lekro kulam b'shem Hashem, and everyone will call to the same God. It doesn't say everybody will be Jewish, friends. Don't let them pin that on you. Don't let the protocols pin the ideas of Jewish dominance and the ideas of the conspiratorial-minded people that want to say that Judaism has a conspiratorial note. No, it doesn't. Our job is to reveal that there is to live by God's laws, and to reveal by doing so that there is a God. That's not a conspiracy. That's an effort to live a proper life. And so, but when people don't like Jews and they're anti-Semitic, well, they're going to take our belief system and twist it. And that's what creates this type of apikorsut, this atheism. And the wisdom of atheism that we talked about, it's the wisdom of argumentation chiefly. And the idea of the wisdom of apikorsut is how to deny intellectually what is not easily proven in the physical world. So when we talk about, for example, the world to come, how can you easily prove that? I can tell you that I had a dream, inside a dream, and I met people in the dream, inside the dream. Now that actually happened to me. And I know where I was, that I wasn't in this world when it happened. Now you're going to believe me? Maybe you will. And maybe you won't. For me, it's a proof that there's something else. And then dreams are just one avenue, one vessel or vehicle of perception. Near-death experiences. You talk to anybody that's had one of those, they're going to tell you right off there's someplace else besides this place. And if we go to Masechet Brachot, it tells us that a person who does not believe in the world to come, he says, no, I don't believe it. He won't get one. Now, it doesn't mean he gets destroyed and thrown away. It just means he's going to have to come back and try again. And that's why reincarnation in Judaism is the ultimate mercy, because we can get 1,000 chances to keep coming back. But if I deny a concept and then I leave my body and I show up in heaven and they say, well, you didn't believe in my world to come, so why should you get that gift if you never believed in it? And so the people who are using the wisdom of atheism is to prove to you that it doesn't matter, that it's not real, that it's not provable by the scientific method, by experiential evidence. But all of us have metaphysical experience, but they say that's not quantifiable. What's quantifiable is if you put your finger in a fire, it's going to get burnt. Or if you drop a ball off of a building, it's going to accelerate at a certain speed. So those kinds of scientific apprehensions of nature only prove to us the qualities of nature. But they don't prove anything about the supernatural. And so they just push that whole thing out of the argument. And this, it's an interesting thing, but I've told atheists before, the God that you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. Because the God that they say they don't believe in is based on a twisted representation of that God in the first place. Who wants to believe in a mean, old, nasty God punishing the world? Who needs such a God? Who wants to be in such a world? Nobody. But they use that to prove that there is no God. And I say, no, you just got sold the wrong goods. Ooh, get a little strawberry on the nose. So you see, we have to be very careful, though, in the argumentation and the debate about these things. The debate about faith usually goes south. It usually doesn't go nice because either a person wants to believe or not. And as we've already learned, to have faith, we have to admit a limitation to human knowledge and human wisdom. If I don't believe there's a wisdom to human knowledge, a limitation to human knowledge, then what's going to stop me from believing that I'm a God and you're a God and everybody's a God? So where do we go from there? If we're all gods, then why do we die? If we're all gods, why can't we stop our enemies from hurting us? But obviously we can't. So we must not be that godlike. Okay. But in the future, in the future, everybody will believe in Hashem. Az yitkayem. And then we will live established. Tavoy toshurim erosh amana. Come in your arrangements from the head of the mountain of faith. Rosh Amanah is an idea of a mountain called Amanah. That's a mountain of faith. Rosh Amanah, Daika, the head of the mountain there, Hayinu bechinat emunah elyonah azo. That is to say, the upper faith, the faith in the infinite being. And that whether you're Jewish or not, whether you've learned these books or not, you still have connection to it by the very fact of your existence. And that you have to have connection to it or you couldn't exist. Shehu Rosh L'Kol Emunot, and it's the beginning, the head of all faith. That is specifically in their formation. Hayinu Hanigun Hazemer. That is the organization of music and song. Hashayach LeRosh Emunah, which is connected to the head of faith. And I grew up in the South, in Florida, and on Sunday morning you could hear a lot of beautiful music coming out of those churches. All kinds. You could have the medieval type of organ music, and you could have that old time gospel. But you felt the people's faith in their song. Now, was it complete? Was it whole? Was it inclusive of all the ideas that we try to learn and that have been passed down to us through Kabbalah and through chassidut? Well, probably not. But for every person is at their level of faith. And that's good. That's where God wants them to be, because that's where He made them to be. And if we want to grow, we can grow. And as we learned, the creating of a world means creating new midot, new measures, that we expand into the world, that our love goes further than it went yesterday, and our patience goes further than it went yesterday. That's expanding our personality. That's becoming more divine, to expand the positive qualities that we all have. And then when we get tested and suddenly we're not in love with the world and we don't have patience and we don't want to listen to anybody, well, that's time to start over and regroup and find out why I'm here, what happened, what ruined my day, what changed my mood, what did somebody say to push my button. All we have to do is go through those questions, and we're going to quickly come back to, that happened because I was upset about such and such because of my ego, or because I'm angry, or disappointed, or impatient. So then I go, wow, I was just impatient, caused me all that suffering. Why don't I just be more patient? Why can't I just let go and let everybody else have their time and their space? And if a guy's late for work, well, okay. So does that mean I have to get upset if I'm the boss? No. See, so we have there's a thing in psychology called codependence, where my emotional state is depending on your performance, and that's not good. You're going to be disappointed a lot in life if your emotional state is dependent on what other people do or don't do or say or don't say. But rather, when we have faith in the one, the infinite light, the God of the universe, and that He's running the show in all the details, that I can back off a little bit and relax and enjoy life and say, okay, if you're going to be on time, great, good idea. If you're late, okay, that happens too. If you're late every day for work, well, then you're not late. You just have a different time for getting to work, It's like if everybody's sick, then that's the new normal, right? If everybody, let's not go too far into that discussion, but I think you know what I mean, right? So So in the future, there's going to be this consensus of faith. And it's not going to be provocative and it's not going to be coercive. Now, there are always people coercive and provocative in religion. They always want to make you like them. They always want to make you write the check out to their organization. That's their deal. But when I got into religion, I said, the last thing I want to do is mix religion and money too much. You have to work in this world and we do different things to make a living. But, the idea of your whole being is wrapped up into earning money for your religion. And I don't know, that sounds like too far down the river. However, fundraising is important if we need to get the word out there. I've had my people help me to learn how to use the internet to be able to put these classes up. I had to pay them money for that. I have to pay them on a monthly basis to keep things rolling, keep updating, I'd still be using my Commodore computer. I don't even remember those, do you? Right? If I didn't have to update, So we all need help in what we do. And we need to charge money for our time to a degree. But, you have to look and ask yourself, do I need to pay money for religion? No. I need to open the book and read and pray. And if I want instruction, I can seek instruction. And if I have questions, then you can ask questions. Now, if you're a person that demands your time, which I've had people that demand my time, they demand that, I said, well, if you want to set a time and demand it, well, then you can pay for it. And that's the way it works. As a psychologist, you make a time and you show up and then you get my undivided attention for 1 hour or 2 or 3. But the funny thing is that people have this entitlement attached to their service. I'm special and my religion's the right religion. And you'll see it right here on Facebook and on YouTube, everywhere else. And that dogma is always, it's always about me and mine, right? It's not about us, and there's always distinctions being made. And those distinctions are actually the signs that it's not coming from this unified place that the Rebbe is talking about, the place of the Ein Sof, the infinite one. There is no end. The infinite one doesn't end at Christianity or Judaism or anywhere else. These are human institutions that were created. Well, we believe our religion was given to us because it's too expansive and wondrously connected to life on this planet to be human made. But without needing to debate that, the point though we want to stay with is that the false faith has its own song and its own wisdom. And you know what? You could sing that song all the way to the gates of hell. And I've been to the gates of hell. And I've seen death in my face. And I've tasted it. And I've known you go one step further, you're done. And I've seen people going over that line. And I've tried to keep people from going over that line. And they're living death in such a way that your heart goes out to them. But there's a certain point where you have to let someone walk. And so, but the point is that there is a beauty to the song of atheism. There is a beauty to the rhythm, to the wisdom. It all sounds, I've read Kant and I've read Goethe and I've read, all the German philosophers, and there are a lot of Jewish German philosophers mixed in there too. Marx and Engels, and Wagner and his music and all these big thinkers. And not just German either. They just happen to be, it's interesting that they're the biggest thinkers. But it always left me empty at the end of the day. It didn't tell me what to do. I made straight A's in philosophy in college, but I still didn't know what to do. I get up in the morning and be a good person. And so I understood that the philosophy was like a maze that took you around in a beautiful garden. In the palace, the garden of the king, they have these mazes made out of shrubbery, right? And you get lost and you find your way. It's very interesting. But getting lost in philosophy is not the purpose of philosophy. It's supposed to get us out of our lostness. So at the end of all those books, I would feel empty. I would feel lost. I would feel like, wow, why did I spend all that time listening to, the Übermenschen idea, the Superman of Nietzsche? Like, why did because I wanted to be Superman? Okay, fine. I also had a cape, when I was a kid. Yeah, you could get a cape today. Just don't put an S on it, But the point is that, okay, so where does he take me with his concepts? Where do they go? Where does that philosophy go? It might be a beautiful journey in your mind. It's a journey of words. But remember one thing, when you learn other people's books, you're taking their mind and putting it in your mind. And I'm not sure I want everybody's software in my software. I like to keep my software as close as I can to the Torah software. And what is a software? It's a collection of commands. What are the mitzvot called? Commands. But Rabbi Nachman says, water it down. Don't call them commands. Call them advices. The Torah is 613 advices. You can take them or leave them. And each person is at their own level. No two people are ever on the same level. So, but the atheism, the apikorsut that we're talking about for days and days already, you see that it might be a beautiful journey, but it's still going to end up at the gates of hell unless I believe that there's something greater. There's a greater creator, there's a greater place to go, and there's a place where I want to go when I leave my body. And hopefully we'll merit to all meet there. Not just on Facebook. Okay? So, but you see, the Rebbe gives us hope because he shows us the unified field behind it. Einstein was always looking for the unified field. What a great idea. But we have the unified field. It's called the Aleph Bet. It's called the Torah itself. And that's the divine presence carries that everywhere. What we call the Shekhinah. So, but it's very hard to measure. It's not so you can't, you can't just squeeze God into one equation. Okay? And so some scientific efforts end in vanity. And Einstein didn't come up with a unified field. But we already had it. We still have it. And that's called being attached to the infinite being. Okay. So be careful of those beautiful songs and those beautiful images and those beautiful galleries and those beautiful museums and all the beautiful things that are out there in the creative world of humanity. Be careful. Why? Because they are beautiful and they are attractive and they do have sparks. There are sparks of godly power in them, but it's taken away into vessels that take us far from where we want to go. Okay. He goes on to tell us this song of faith, of the highest faith, of the infinite being. Only the righteous man of the generation will merit to that song. Now, wait a minute. That doesn't sound very egalitarian. That only one guy in the generation gets to merit to that light, to that song, to that zemer, that melody. Why not everybody? But it says, and it's not just every tzaddik of every generation, because every generation is about 25, 30 years long. That's also a debate in the Talmud. How long is a generation? Some say it's 100 years. Some say 50, some say 30. Okay. The point is, it has to be someone on the level of Moshe. And we learned in this Torah, what's the level of Moshe? To not ask the question that cannot be answered. To not go to the place that's beyond human intellect. And to have silence in the face of those questions. Because the apikoros, the atheist, will always ask the question without, he might be sincere, but not usually. Usually they're insincere when they ask you, well, what was there before God? It's not a question, because there was no before God. And what will be after God? Well, that's also not a question. There's no such thing as after God. And so it sounds very wide and broad and high and impressive, but it's really not. It's a construct of words designed to trap the mind in a loop. And we don't need the loop. We have simple faith. And so the leader of the generation has to be at this level of Moses, this level of silence in the face of all the opposition that he had to face. And this faith, this level of faith, Hu bechinat shtika. It is silence. When you can be silent in the midst of all that noise and just listen and hear behind the noise of these arguments. I call them the Thursday night debates. In Jews, it's Thursday night tonight. It's the night where the yeshivas stay open late and people, they make a l'chaim, they drink a beer, they learn, they pray, they sing, they dance, whatever it might be. And it's a nice night in Judaism because it gives you a kind of a relief from the tension of all week learning hard in yeshiva. Okay. But there is a place where people start to argue about things that if you join those arguments, it's going to bring you down. It's going to take you from the level of faith. Just like there's a level of silence that is higher than speech. And so you ever notice when you're quiet, you're at peace? And the minute you start talking, you lose your peace? That our peace actually descends into the noise. And it could be high talk even. And certainly if we go from a high discussion to a low discussion, we feel the fall. And even if you're in a high silent place, a place of total acceptance, of observation of the world without judgment, the minute I enter the argument, especially the argument of this type of the beauty of atheism, if you want to call it, right, you'll only end up back at the gates of hell. Because people are going to argue until you're not going to be happy anymore. I'm sorry I got involved here. And I remember those Thursday night discussions, and they happen a lot around the spiritual world. It depends on where you are, but nonetheless, but you have to strive for this level of Moses, the silence of Moses, right? Because Moshe had this level. And then Moses sang, we're told, right, at the splitting of the sea. And our sages taught, Shar lo nemar. Why didn't the Torah write Moses sang in the past tense? Why did the Torah write Moses will sing in the future tense? What, God doesn't know his own grammar? He can't get the grammar straight? That Shar is past tense and Yashir is future tense. No, so the rabbis point that out. And Ella Yashir, that rather in the future, from here, we learned that Moses will sing again, and they use that as a proof of the revival of the dead. And not just the revival of Moses, every soul that merits to receive his higher being. Because we all have a spark of the infinite that will not die. And that's the Az Yashir. And then Moses will sing, and then all of us will sing. And we could be worried. I used to worry, well, what about all the people who don't believe? All the people who haven't even heard these talks and listened to these teachings or read them or anything. How are they expected to believe in the world to come if they're never exposed? Well, that's where we have to invoke a different idea. The infinity of God's mercy is that he can lead us and will lead us even if we don't. Even if we don't know. If we have the purity and innocence of heart, he will take us to the truth. And so we learn from the change in the tense of the simple word to sing or will sing in the future, we learn the revival of the dead. Shadibor, Shatid Moshe, Lashir, Latid, Lavo, Gamkein. And Moses, just like he sang in the past, he will sing in the future. Ki kol ashirot, ben kol, Olam hazeh, because all the songs of this world, Bein Shel Atid Lavo, whether those of the future, who rock Etzel Moshe. What does this mean? Well, he's telling us that all the songs emerge through this particularly righteous person who stands at the pyramid of song. He stands at the gate. Now in heaven, it's hard for us to imagine, but there's a place where song emerges. Reb Shlomo Carlebach wrote over 2,000 songs. And when he stopped writing, his Rebbe told him the gates of the song have been closed to you. And he died within a month after that. Because his work was done. And there are gates for wisdom, and there are gates for mathematical wisdom, and there's gates for musical wisdom, and there's gates for all types of perception in the psychic realm. And it sounds very abstract and obtuse, you know. What do you mean a gate? What's a gate? A gate is a place where you drive your car through and pay your toll, right? No, well, there might be a toll to pay up there, but here it's a psychic gate, meaning it's a place where a particular permutation of God's light emerges in your mind. Because remember, he's got the infinite light, and he can permute it to be a person who's really good at music, or a person who's really good at building, or a person who's really good at drawing, or a person who's really good at babies. No, well, I'm not going to say, did I say babysitting? Yeah, I did. Babysitting isn't so simple. Yeah, even if they're your grandkids, after the couple hours, Anyways, no, but pardon the facetiousness, but really, we have to understand that just as we things seem precise in this world, they're precise up there too. It's just, it's a different material. And the material is the letters of God used to create the world are still creating the world. Okay. Rashi said, Yashir, the Yashir that Moses will sing in the future, Yud Shel Shem HaMakshava. This Yud is called on the idea of thought itself. That thought precedes speech. And speech and thought, they precede song also. And he says about this, we had an earlier concept that there is an idea where Moses was quiet. He asked God, why did Rebbe Akiva get murdered by the Romans so horribly? Is this the Torah and this is the reward? Who wants that reward? Who wants that Torah if that's the reward? You're going to end up being burned at the stake by the Romans. So God answered Moses, Kach ala b'makshava. Be quiet. Be quiet, and you will go up in thought. See, this thought is the vehicle to rise above our present perception. And the present perception I have is that it's a bad thing to die burning at the stake, right? This seems so hard to figure out. But if you were Rabbi Akiva's soul, the great Rabbi Akiva, who the whole generation rested on his shoulders, and he had 24,000 students that died, and some people say because they were not honorable to each other, and some people say it was because they were fighting the people outside Moab who were attacking the borders of Israel for many, many years. However not they died, Rebbe Akiva was this figure that they say that the whole oral Torah depended on him. That we wouldn't have the Mishnah, all the laws, and we wouldn't have the Talmud or the arguments about those laws if we hadn't had Rebbe Akiva. So to be that powerful, that important to the transmission of Moses' Torah to the future generations, there was a price. And Rebbe Akiva, he paid a very big price. Now, we can't understand it. And that's why we need that quality of silence. And to say, I don't know, and it's okay not to know. Actually, God's telling me, don't try to know. Because you will only hurt yourself. You will come to deny God. If God does something like that, I'm going to say, well, I don't want this God. I'm going to walk away from religion altogether. And that's not why I'm here. So, kahala b'makshava means you will go up in thought only if you have silence of speech. Then you can go up in your thinking. This is Bechinat Moshe, Bechinat Shtika. This is the silence of Moshe. Therefore, the music, the melody of the righteous, this is also the idea of Moses, right? Because music, it's interesting. Music it's audio. You hear it, but it's not speech. We're not talking about singing songs. We're talking about melodies and harmonies that are created by instruments, right? Because that's also higher than speech. Because speech is when you take the light and bring it down into words. Thought, we don't have to put it. They're going into, actually the light is going into our words, but the words are only in our mind and not coming out through the mouth. You see in the difference, the level from your mind to your mouth, in Kabbalah, this little space here from your forehead to your mouth, it's a long way. It's a long journey. Okay? And he tells us by having that silence and going up in thought, then you're given the ability to take the souls out of the atheism and help and bring them back through this music. Not through words, not through arguing, not through debating, but through the music itself. The higher level will enter a person's soul and pull him out of there. And he brings these souls out from the atheism, the epikursut, of the empty space. We talked about that beginning point of creation when there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not even God's light. Not even his will. He hid his own will. Ki niguno, of this level of Rosh Hashanah, the head of faith, the song of the person of the head of faith, Hayinu emunot elyonah, this higher faith, this has that power to pull people out. She'al yedei nigun emunah zo nitbatlim kol apikursut, and through this faith, all the denial is erased. Now, I experienced that 35 years ago, listening to certain songs by the Hasidim, and I felt the elevation. I said, there's got to be something here. Nobody's talking to me. I'm just listening to the humming and the chanting. It was chanting, really. And then just recently, someone said, I don't go to synagogue to pray. I'm not religious. Okay, fine. But I go to synagogue to listen to the music. And I said, oh, that's fine. I didn't explain to them this Torah because I wouldn't want to interfere with their process. But their process was that I'm going to find faith through the song right now. That's their level right now. What will be, will be. And all the slower levels of song are canceled out by this high level of song. This high level of harmony. Which is higher than everything. So there's this place of the Song of Songs from which emerges all the other songs. And this structural idea of the pyramid is the way all knowledge is dispersed in humanity. From the higher to the lower, from the old to the present, and into the future. And if we learn to track it, you get a lot of pleasure from seeing how, if you study the history of any discipline, you'll see how things spread. You look how languages spread throughout the continents. And if you follow languages, you can see words that are always popping up in every language that are very similar. Like the word for father, the word for mother, the word for house, the word for field. It's endless, and the more languages you know, the more you see it. So anyways, I hope this helps pull us out, because that's the idea here. Because even if we're believers, we still have little points in us that want to fight, that want to argue, that want to defend, that want to hold on to something that we really don't need. So God should bless us all with that silence of Moses in order to rise up in thought, and then we can elevate everything around us. God bless you all. Have a great Shabbat. We'll be live tomorrow afternoon. And we'll have another interesting talk from these types of wisdom that Rebbe Nachman and the Kabbalah and the Zohar and all the others have taught us, and continue spreading the knowledge. Have a great evening. All the best.